jump into the episode, I want to let you know about my groundbreaking program, Breaking the Chains of Avoidance, a program designed just for avoidant men to help them from going from avoidance of relationships and love into deep connection and the abilities to create deep connection and lasting relationships, right? So if you're interested in this, if avoidance is ruining your dating life and your relationships, just go down to the description below and you can put yourself onto the wait list so that you can get a huge discount off when I launch the program in a few weeks. The program will be starting on the 22nd of April, so don't delay. Welcome back to another mini episode by me. These episodes I do on the weekends to really dive deep into something that's come up in the work that I'm doing with the men that I work with. It's something I know that's really going to support you guys. So here I want to talk about 7 reasons why you pull away when things get serious, right? Maybe you've had this experience, right? Things start to get serious and then you start to find reasons why this relationship isn't right. You start to think about an ex. Maybe you start to worry about this person and their suitability for the future, right? These are all ways that we kind of create this kind of emotional and physical even separation. And maybe for you, it's you start to just take a long time to message back, right? So I'm going to talk about 7 reasons why this happens and what you can do to change. So here's the pattern often. You meet somebody, they're attractive, there's potential, you start to get to know them, you go on anything from 1 date to 20 dates or whatever, right? It depends. It could be, you could know someone for a week or 2, up to, years even for some people, this happens. And then you start to see some flaws, right? Start standing out. It can be things that are physical. It can be things about like mental intelligence, education, the amount that they read, the amount that they don't read, the things they do read, the things they watch, the way they walk, their toes, like you name it, you can find some faults in it, right? And then you start to kind of feel maybe uneasy, you feel a bit irritated, you start to have these thoughts about like, I'm not sure if this is right. Or you maybe go into this stance of like, if this is right, I should feel a certain way. If this is right, I should feel a certain way, right? And then you kind of consciously or unconsciously, you emotionally or energetically back away from the relationship, waiting in this passive stage of like waiting for some sort of sign. I'm waiting for a sign that this is right. If this is right, I'm going to start feeling a different way or something like that, right? And then over time, either the relationship just starts to fall apart and you're like, you see, this wasn't right. It would have worked if it was right, which is like newsflash. That's bullshit lie. Or you just leave. You're like, there's this thing. I'm not feeling the connection. Maybe they start complaining about you're pulling away and you're like, this person complains too much. I don't need this. This is too much hassle and blah, blah, blah. And then weeks, months, years, decades even later, the cycle repeats, right? And maybe some variations, but that's pretty much the cycle, right? So why does this happen, right? At the beginning, things feel safe and easy, because you don't know this person and there's no pressure, right? There's a lot of kind of flooding of oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine because it's like early, it's new, it's this honeymoon phase, right? The connection doesn't really require any work to start with. It's easy, it's effortless, everything's new and fresh and exciting, right? And here's the thing, and this is something I see in a lot of avoidant men, right? This is a dynamic I see for a lot of avoidant men in particular, is then suddenly as you start to get to know someone, there feels this pressure, this worry. And, deep down, the worry is that they're not going to think that you're good enough. They're going to see that, the things about you that you don't feel good about and they're not going to want you or care about you, right? There's that feeling of rejection or making a mistake or hurting someone that starts to come in, right? Another reason why this starts to happen is that love, connection, relationships, they activate your deepest wounds. Your deepest wounds often come from our childhood, come from our caregivers, our mothers, our fathers. Maybe you are listening to this and maybe one of your parents was maybe aloof emotionally and they didn't really connect with you emotionally. Maybe you had a father who wasn't around. It was a bit like my situation. Or you had an early experience of being really burnt badly in love, and you kind of like, love is dangerous. Love hurts. Yeah. You learned that getting attached or depending on people leads to pain. Yeah, leads to pain, rejection, abandonment, whatever it may be. Another reason this kind of dynamic starts to happen is that what you start to feel is any sort of like small ruptures or disagreements really are overblown in your mind, to be honest, and you linger on them, right? These micro ruptures feel like big threats to you, right? That's the big part, right? Your nervous system registers them as like, oh my God, this is really bad. This is really terrible. So if you have a small argument or disagreement, or they ask for more time, you're like, oh, and this person's having a threat to my safety and my space and how I want to live life. And, oh, I don't want that. And that's terrible, when really they're just asking for a little bit more time and connection. Right. Another reason this starts to happen is that you find yourself getting overwhelmed by triggers, and your triggers overwhelm you quickly. So maybe someone asking you if you love them is a trigger for you, right? Because that's more closeness and emotion, or they want more communication. That's a trigger from you. Or they want to hold hands and be physically touchy-feely in public, especially. What's happening is this, like a trigger for you is basically when we are responding to something disproportionately to what it is, right? And usually with a trigger, there's a story. So your partner, the woman you're dating, she may say, hey, I'd like to see you more often, right? Which in essence is a really reasonable request, right? As you deepen a relationship. And you're like, oh, but I'm so busy. I don't have time to, see someone more. And then the story is like, God, they want all of my time. They want to take up so much of my free time that I don't have any time for myself. And you can see where you've gone from the small request, like a little bit more time together, and you've overblown it into something it's not. Often we go from like the request into like some black and white thinking, some like overblown thinking. And then the emotions come with it, like frustration. And then you try and collude with other people and get them on board, right? These are the sorts of things we do when we get triggered. So it's just to notice that. Maybe you withdraw, maybe you numb out through drink, drugs, or alcohol, or your phone, which is the most common one we have these days. Another reason why these dynamics happen is that ultimately there's a deep fear you have of being hurt and hurting somebody else. And I think this thing about hurting someone, a lot of avoidant men talk to me, they're like, I don't want to hurt anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody. And I think there's a level of actually care in this, is like they don't want to hurt anyone the way that they've been hurt, right? And that's really, noble in many ways. But there's also a second level to this, which is kind of like seeing other people as really fragile, right? And I think this is a reflection on how we feel as avoidant men emotionally about ourselves. We see ourselves as emotionally fragile, right? We have this tough exterior of like nothing bothers us, but actually there's a lot of emotion happening. So I think there's a deeper feeling of being fragile that we kind of project onto other people. And some of that is, due to people being hurt by our actions and stuff in the past. But this not wanting to hurt people actually causes hurt, because it causes lying, hiding, dishonesty, not telling the truth, not being clear, not being open about what's happening. So not trying to hurt someone actually causes hurt. And one of the things, again, newsflash, it's not possible to have relationships without hurting anybody. You're going to hurt the people you love. It's a kind of part of life, right? That's part and parcel of being with people, is also hurting them sometimes. Not deliberately, just that people take things that happen and it hurts them. Not to mean you don't care, but it is a part of relationship. And then the last point here, why this dynamic happens, and this is probably one of the most important ones, is that you don't know what love should look like and what love should feel like, right? Because your experience of love from childhood is often some sort of distance, some sort of chaos, some sort of condition. Like, oh, you only get love when I perform well, I do well at school, or I'm making lots of money. So there's some way in which you're not used to this unconditional love that children receive from their caregivers, from their parents. So that's your script for love. So that your script for love is, should we say, maladaptive or dysfunctional to what love really feels like. So often love will feel weird or strange when you're actually in a healthy relationship, or it feel boring, or it might feel overwhelming, right? And that's something to really look out for. I'm just going to mention that I've got my program coming up, Breaking the Chains of Avoidance. And that is going to be starting on the 22nd of April. And I don't want you to miss it, because if these things I've just been through, these 7 or 8 things I've just been through, sound like predominantly what you're experiencing, right? The chances are you're probably avoidant, right? You're avoidant attachment. And in other episodes, I go deeper into what that is and why that is and so forth. But I've got a program that's designed specifically for avoidant men, right? To help them get out of these avoidant habits, fear of intimacy, fear of closeness, being overwhelmed by emotions and triggers, being afraid of love, being fear of hurting someone, into the capacities and skills of creating loving, deeply connected relationships, I've run this program once before, and the men came out and said it was one of the best experiences I've had in their life. It was life-changing for them. Men got into relationships. Men salvaged relationships that had broken down. Men continue to let me know that how this program has helped them in their dating life, their relationships, and far further. Men have made friends. Men have deepened relationships with family out of the back of this program. So it's really transformational. So if you want more details, add yourself to the waitlist down below, and then you'll get a lovely little discount off the full price if you choose to join, which you should, because it's amazing. And I'll just send you some details about the program, and that's it. It's no commitment. So what can you do to shift this pattern, right? First of all, you should join the Breaking the Chains of Avoidance, because this is going to help you do it deeply and hold you accountable to doing it, because the chances are you've probably tried to shift these patterns before and you just fall back into your patterns because there's no accountability and there's no support there, right? So what you got to do is catch the pattern. And there's a lot of pattern catching, right? Is you got to keep catching the pattern when it happens. Like, oh, I've noticed that I'm trying to move away as this relationship gets closer. Actually, nothing's really happened. I've just made all this up in my head. Let me lean in. And sometimes it's a big story. Sometimes it's a small story. And you need to learn to be able to tell the difference between what's real and what you're imagining. And that's hard, because sometimes it might be like, oh, I don't like the way that she eats, or, oh, she's not that intelligent because she hasn't got a degree. So I don't know if this can work. And you have to go, okay, does not having a degree equal not being intelligent? Or does watching trashy TV equal not being intelligent? Because sometimes we make these things up in our head to justify the underlying emotional fears and worries, concerns and triggers that we have, because we're going, why do I feel this way? It must be this thing. So you got to learn to catch the patterns, right? One of the things you got to do also is sit with the discomfort. When it happens, instead of running away and backing out, is leaning into the relationship, right? Leaning in or staying in the posture of the relationship. So instead of being like, oh, I'm not sure if this is right, let me start seeing this person less, which, makes no fucking sense really, right? To see if a relationship is right, to see them less. You actually see them in the same amount and stay open to the relationship working instead of closing off or waiting for some magical sign, yeah? Stop waiting for fucking magical signs. They don't come, right? The grass is greenest where you water it, right? Where you put your energy, where you put your focus and your energy, that's where things flow, right? It doesn't mean the relationship's 100% going to work out, but it's definitely not going to work out if you lean away, yeah? And stop putting energy towards it and start just ruminating on why it could be wrong for you. You've got to do some work about challenging the belief, and you've got to do this work not just on the mental level, the emotional level, and you've also got to do it at the nervous system level of shifting the belief, because that's where it sits and that's where you're actually being triggered and causing you issues. And the last thing I'm going to say, and this might be the scariest one, is communicate. Talk to some friends, right? Talk to some friends who are in healthy relationships. First of all, don't just talk to your boys who are out in rubbish relationships who have no idea. Talk to someone who can be impartial, can be really honest with you, even if it's brutally honest with you, right? Be that a coach, a therapist, or, like I said, a friend who can be really honest with you. Because the last thing you want to do is go to some yes people in your life and go, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I had this situation with a girl and I didn't feel it was right, so you must be right. No, you don't. You want someone who's going to challenge you and call you out on your BS, right? And communicate with them, or a step further, you can communicate with the person you're with. Like, hey, I have this habit of like, sometimes I get in my head about relationships and I start to find faults and it causes me to lean out. But I'm trying not to do that, right? That's a massive step. That's a really important one. When you start to do that, you're going to start to see your relations really transform, because that will do a lot of dissolving within the relationship around your emotional fears. But that's it for today. Yeah. I'm going to tell you to join, really the way to shift it is to join Breaking the Chains of Avoidance. It's an incredible program with me in a brotherhood of men who are all in a similar situation to you, supporting you to being better, supporting you to being the man you want to be. And, that's something that we don't get much in life with groups of men. It's not just full of banter and people taking the piss. This is like real support and accountability to being better men and being better lovers and partners and so forth. And we go through all the different things that you need to really overcome your avoidance. So check out the link below for that. And I'll speak to you soon. But actually, before that, quickly, if you're listening to this on YouTube, please drop a like down below, subscribe to the channel to see more wonderful videos, and actually drop a comment below. Tell me what you'd like to hear more about, right? What you'd like to cover in another video, or, what you really took away from this episode. But now, I'll let you go.